Hey folks, Steve here with another World in Flames video. In this video we'll be looking to continue on Case White, the invasion of Poland. And I want to get a few things addressed kind of at the beginning of this video, just commentary from the last one. I realized fighting with my camera and sort of, having to double check certain rules as we were executing them on camera led to that video, the last video, being a little bit longer than I intended for the content that was actually within it. So I think with this video, I'm going to really try my best to do a lot more cuts. So I will just stop the camera and reorient or take my looking up of the rules off camera. I had to do it a couple of times and I thought I'd be quick about it, but I really felt like I left too much dead air and that just makes for a longer video. So we'll be really intending this time to kind of cut that back. No one really mentioned any issues with it, but it's just a self-conscious thing. I want to make sure this time is valuable for you if you're watching. So I will certainly seek to do that. We will have some more mechanics to look at here in this particular video. So we're going to get into that. One thing from the last video that I should have mentioned is that when Poland was declared war upon, Commonwealth, when they were aligning with Poland, had to have decided will they put the Polish units into their force pool, or will they let all the units, when they're destroyed, just go out of the game? And it kind of doesn't matter for Poland, because once Poland is conquered, their units go away anyway. For the most part, there are some tricks that you can do, but I'm not going to do that. I won't get into it here. It's too much in the weeds. There are some ways you can salvage an HQ of the Polish by moving them into eastern Poland, but we're not going to do that. It's too late now anyway. So yeah, anyway, you are supposed to do that most of the time for miners, because basically if the miner's not destroyed, you have the ability, essentially, any units that get destroyed, you could rebuild them, and the power that's taken control of them can, as part of their build, produce them, essentially. And a miner's factories and resources are effectively controlled by its major power that it aligned with. So, say Spain aligned with the Commonwealth, and now the Commonwealth is getting Spanish production. They could randomly draw Spanish units from their force pool if they decided to put the Spanish units in that force pool, right? They made that decision. Or if they don't think the units are good enough, and they want to keep their own really good units being drawn every production, then they might say, nah, if any are destroyed, they'll just go out of the game. It's just sort of a decision. You got to decide what's best. What do you think? Again, with Poland, it doesn't really matter, but technically by the rules, we would have made some decision of that. If somehow Poland was going to survive past this turn, we could maybe, in theory, have drawn some of those Polish units in production and have them come onto the board if they were built fast enough. But I think most folks recognize it's just not worthwhile for Poland, so we're not going to worry about it. We're just going to say all the stuff's going to be eliminated from the game, because they're going to be anyway once Poland is conquered. And I have a strong suspicion that on the next Axis impulse, Poland will be snuffed out at this point. I think we've done very well. We haven't lost a German unit yet, but of course that was the surprise impulse, so we'll see what happens. Okay, so what else is going on? Well, the next thing we're going to do now is it is now the Allied impulse, and to keep track of that, I'm just going to show on the direction spiral how this is done. So when we look at the weather, the weather instructs us to move the impulse track one box per impulse. So we slide this over, we flip it to say Allied impulse, just to note that it is the Allied impulse. I'll zoom in so you can see that a little bit better. So Allied impulse, second impulse, because we're only slotting one box. And you can see, it could be a while as we get further ahead, when we start getting to 6 and 7 and 8, is when you start rolling the die to see if the turn ends. And the Allies want it to end sooner, the Axis wants it to go longer, usually, in the early game. But here, until the weather changes, it's going to be, plenty of action is going to take place with clear weather. Now, it is September, October, so there's a decent chance that the weather is going to turn bad, but we're not going to roll for weather until before the start of the next Axis impulse. So for right now, the weather is fair for the Allies to take action. So just something to keep in mind, and we'll do that every impulse. I won't always do it on camera, but I want to make sure that folks understand how that works. I'm like fighting with my camera. Okay. All right. So we're going to have now the Allied impulse. And again, very similarly, we have, we're starting here. Essentially, you go through and it says, oh, okay, here's second side's impulse. If the action stage didn't end, repeat the steps, D2 for the second side, blah, blah, blah. Right? So we're going to look at the declaration of war phase. And again, we have some restrictions on that. Grab my sheet of paper that I've strewn about somewhere. Again, this is the special rule for the scenario. Again, Germany must declare war on Poland. We did that. Must align with Commonwealth. We did that. No major power may make any other declaration of war. Blah, blah, blah. And then France and the Commonwealth must declare war on Germany. In their first impulse, no major power may make any other declarations of war. That impulse. So we'll probably let Russia take a chill pill and not worry about Finland quite yet. But we will probably have the Russians invade eastern Poland. So we'll see how that all works out. So as you can imagine, the declaration of war step, like I said in the last video, it's more than just declaring war. There's actually quite a bit more to it. But we'll go ahead and say, we've got to say it out loud, France and the Commonwealth each declare war on Germany. Oh my goodness. So, all right, let me put a cut here, guys. Okay, so another reminder, everything in WiF has to be looked at through the context of American eyes. That feels very unfair, doesn't it, if you're not American? But the reality is the United States responds to everything in some capacity, or at least it's really the global stage. And how is this looking like? Is this a European conflict? How much do we really care, right? So America seemed to care that Germany invaded a neutral country, but with the UK and France declaring war on Germany, hey, that means somebody's doing something about it, right? Why do us Americans in a whole other continent across the Atlantic Ocean care? So on our U.S. entry action chart, there is one here. Commonwealth or France, or both, declare war on Germany. Well, they have to do that, and here it is. It's a -9, so how do you interpret that? Well, we're going to roll a die. If it is 9 or lower, we will take a chit out of the entry pool. So of the couple of chits that we have, 1, 3, and 1, there's quite a good chance that we're going to have to remove one. Pretty good chance. We have to roll very well. So let's roll that now, and let's see what we get. And we rolled a 6, so that is within the 9, so we're going to remove an entry chit. Now, it is random, so we're going to take our 3 chits that were in, the 3, the 1, and the 1, and let's see which one gets removed. We hope it's not the 3, and it is just one of the 1s. So, nothing too crazy there, just that we have less in the chit pool there. So we've lowered our U.S. entry. The Western Allies got this, right? We don't, if this was 1914, we're going to let those guys handle it. We'll wait a couple years. We'll see what happens, right? Who cares? It's fine. It's fine, right? So the UK and the French, having declared war on Germany, the U.S. is thinking, okay, the job is covered. We're not worried about this sort of thing, right? So the declaration of war phase continues on from there. We're not going to bother with the Soviet Union claim because there are going to be issues where if we do too much stuff that might offend the Americans or have the Americans not like the Allies, we're going to bottom out on U.S. entry, so we want to wait for that yet. So the Russians will hold back for now. And let's see. Okay, active major powers and minor countries may call out their reserves. So this was the part of the rules I really wanted to make sure that you see. So calling out reserves involves each major power and the minor countries that have reserve units can now be called out provided they are at war with a major power. So Poland was going to get to do this anyway, but now that France and the UK are at war with a major power, being Germany, even though they just declared it, they can still do this. They can call out their reserve units. So they have to have the res imprint or printing on the back of the counter, and basically, and you don't have to call them out, but you might as well. I don't think there's really any reason not to. Um, they're going to go, in the reserves are going to come onto the board, and they're going to go there as if they were reinforcements, except they're going to be face down, so we can't use them right away. And then we're also going to be able to put our militia units into the force pools for our units. So we didn't actually have access to militia at the beginning of the game. That those militia are wartime units only, but in major war, I should say, with another power. So for the British and the French sort of have a leg up on Germany because Germany can't call out its reserves until the next impulse. But we're going to place the French in the Commonwealth reserves. They're going to be face down, and we're going to add again all the militia units into the force pools. Now, if there are any militia units with a reserve print on the back, we get to set those guys up. But any militia without the reserve notation just go into the force pool. You can build them. They're cheap, and they're usually decently strong, so they're great to build, but we won't get access to them right away. We'll have to produce them. So this is the stage where we would do that. So the powers that are going to get to do that again, Commonwealth, French, and the Polish, we'll go ahead and set those up. As we've talked about already, the Polish are going to get those reserves in Lodz and Warsaw, since they are still there, and that's going to max out their stacking in those hexes. The Commonwealth and the French obviously will look to make the best use of those. Again, they're face down, so we can't do a whole lot with them, but at least we're getting free stuff on the board. That's the important thing. So I'm going to put a cut here. We'll come back and we'll show the change. Okay, the reserves have been called out for France and Britain, and there's not really much to say on the placement, because the placement doesn't matter so much. It's really going to come down to the next turn when they can flip back up, and then we'll rearrange the units as we would like to. A couple of things I'll just point out is, like, we got a garrison over here that has low movement but decent combat. I think I'm going to have him earmarked to be transported to Gibraltar when we kind of have the transport capacity loosened up, because I kind of really need to get those areas covered. I need to get Malta covered if I can. I need to get Gibraltar covered. I don't want to put like my most powerful units there because it would maybe be wasted, but I at least need to get something so that any amphibious invasion from Italy or even Germany or whatever would be a major risk. Them being empty, it's still a risk for the Axis, but I would want to make sure that I have those areas covered. Ordinarily, I'd be looking at sending some divisions down there, but because we're not playing with divisions, it's a core or nothing, and I want to get something down there. At least Gibraltar. Gibraltar is probably more important than Malta, but I'd still like Malta, just because it would make it easier to protect that island, and it's useful for projecting power in the middle of the Mediterranean and just hitting Italy when the time comes. So we'll need to look at that, but otherwise, there were some units that went into London and Manchester. There were some militia that were for India and Australia. Those kind of just leave the game automatically. And the thing is that the future militia, the reserve militia, I just took out of the game because they're not going to set up far away. And the special rules for this scenario actually say that any GAR or garrison or militia units that are built that are for India or Australia are removed from the game when they're built. So you don't get. Here's the thing: you don't get the ability to just build the militia that go into the UK. You have to spend the production and hope to draw them randomly. But if you draw an Indian unit or an Australian unit, you still have to work them out of your force pool, and you still have to spend the production. They just don't come onto the map because we're Europe only. But it's representing the fact that for the UK, the Commonwealth, you're getting all the production for it, essentially. It's just that you still have to protect your other holdings, and they need defense over there. So those units, if built, are going to stay off map. It's kind of weird, but I understand why the special rule is set up that way. Those are done, and then the Polish reserves have been set up as well in Lodz and Warsaw, as they are meant to be, because they were militia units. So all done there, and now we can start looking at the actual action, the activities for the Commonwealth, and what actions they're going to pick for the turn. Okay, well, I'm coming back. It's been a little while since I recorded the last segment. For you, it's just a second. For me, it's been a while. Um, okay, so we got the militias called out, or the reserves rather called out, and now it is time for the Allies, or at least the factions that are on the Allied side, to do their action announcements. So again, you have to do this at the beginning, and you say what your actions are, and that's going to govern what you can do. Again, something like a naval activity or a naval action means you can do basically unlimited naval stuff and probably a little bit of air, and so on and so forth. All that good stuff, right? Right. So Russia is going to, the USSR. The Soviet Union has to take a combined action because they are still neutral. So that's decided for them. They're going to be in that state for quite a while, so they can only move so many things. They're up there, up against Finland right now. They haven't yet decided to do anything yet. They're a little worried about the U.S. entry impact, to be honest. But so they're probably just going to move in and take eastern Poland. So they can do that with a combined, no problem. We'll get to that. France. What does France wants to do? Well, probably the main thing that they're going to worry about doing is they're going to get the Moroccan unit transported to Marseille, and then they're going to try to have that unit start marching up towards the front line. And so in order to do that, what we really need to be able to do is do a naval transport and still have a land move afterwards. So effectively, we are going to need to do a combined action. Now, we don't have to take a combined action because France is active. But in this case, because we're still waiting for the Sitzkrieg to kind of shake out, it makes sense to just spend the time and get more forces to the mainland to help the defense of France. So that is what we're going to do. We're going to do a combined as France. And then for Britain, the way I've kind of thought this through is I think we're going to do a naval. Maybe unsurprising for the Commonwealth, but a naval. And what we need to do in terms of that naval move is to get some of our ships in a position to defend the convoys, because now that Germany is at war, they could opt to send their subs out to start just right away start disrupting convoys. So that's in danger. And basically, the Commonwealth has an opportunity to play defense there. They can also ship the BEF to France, into Calais and Boulogne, so they will very likely do that this turn. And we'll talk about foreign troop commitment here in a second, but just to get that out of the way. So there you go, for the forces that are there. And of course there's the United States. Technically, they get to do something too, but it's just going to be a combined, and they don't really have anything they need to do. They're just kind of sitting there hanging out. So for the first long while, the U.S. doesn't have much to do but to hang out and enjoy being American. So there you go. So 3 combines and a naval just to get started. And something to keep in mind with that is that because the Commonwealth is choosing to do a naval, their minor, Poland, my camera screwed up again. I'm getting real tired of that. God, it's so annoying. It's so infuriating. I'm not sure where I lost you. Poland. So with Poland being a minor aligned to the Commonwealth, what that means is that what they can do is limited by the Commonwealth's activity limits. And because we're doing a naval, there's really not much for the Commonwealth, the Polish to do here. They're still, struck in awe of the German onslaught, and so they're essentially going to be gobbled up. But at this point, I think the Commonwealth is just deciding that its own convoys are more important than the Polish at this point. And the Poles will still be able to react on the Germans' impulse when they try to fly combat missions and attack, but on their actual turn, the Poles really aren't going to be doing much as we work everybody else into their given decisions here. So, yeah, there we go. That's the quick talk to. Now I'm gonna zoom in a little bit. I do want to talk about foreign troop commitment. So, by default, the Commonwealth and France do not cooperate. So that means that they can't necessarily help each other in air combat, they can't stack together. There is sort of a logical separation between the two. And I believe that can be rectified with some U.S. entry actions later when you start to get like a unified Allied command, but that's pretty far away. And so in order to actually operate in France, we need to satisfy the foreign troop commitment requirement. So what is that? So basically, you need to have in your allies' home territory an HQ, and we do have Gort there. So you're going to first basically ensure that, in this step, if you're going to send a whole bunch of guys over, you need to have an HQ there. And then how many units can be there is going to be dependent on the reorg value of the HQ. So Gort's going to come over, he has a 2, and I believe that means we can have 2 other non-HQ units in France. Now, air technically counts there, if I'm reading this right. I'll have to double check, but I believe that to be the case. The rules say the total number of that country's non-HQ units there is less than or equal to the total printed reorganization values of the HQs. So yeah, so Gort and 2 other units. I think I have earmarked that mech unit. Camera screwed up again. I'm so irritating. I don't know if I got to get a new camera or a new memory card or what. I'm not sure what's causing that problem. But yeah, we're going to get Gort over here. He's going to have his mech, and then we're going to have a motorized unit I have over here transported over eventually as well. And so we'll have at least those 2 ground units and Gort, so technically 3 total land units. And for now, we're going to have to operate the British Air Force from the coast, but we should be able to be in range of some of these hexes over here to kind of help defend that area, but it's going to be a little bit of a challenge. We're going to have to leave a lot of things up to the French Air Force. Now, there are ways to address this. So if we were to put an additional HQ into France, we could then, depending on the reorg value, add additional units. So make way for some more air units or bring in more ground units. I've read online some strategies of people bringing the Wavel, whatever his name is, I'm sure I'm saying it wrong, HQ from Egypt and shipping him to France so that he can back up Gort, and then you can get a lot more British in there. I don't know that I'm going to bother to do that. I've got other units I need to be shifting around than to waste my transport capacity on that, but it is an option, and I can think about doing it. I could potentially get him shipped into Marseille and sort of come up from the south, but I don't know. We'll have to see how it goes. I'll have to see how I'm feeling with that, but at least for now, we're going to get Gort's maximum allotment into France, and that should work for at least the initial phases. I mean, I've even heard some people have the British just abandon the French and just say, we're not going to waste our production on that. We're going to, keep our guys at home or defend the Med and let France fall, and then just focus on creating fighters and bombers and ships and everything else, and not worry about losing units to a Dunkirk type situation that maybe they can't do the Dunkirk thing. They can't extricate themselves and get home. Something like that. I don't know. A lot of different ways to look at it, but I am going to try to get the British on the continent and try to help defend Belgium and northern France. At least that's the idea. So we'll look at doing that. So now I'm going to put a cut here, even though my camera keeps screwing up on me. I'm going to put a cut just to concentrate and figure out the order of operations I want to show things in. So we'll be back. Okay, well, with our actions selected, I went ahead and did the naval movements for the French and the Commonwealth. So here is my thinking, I guess, for now, in the time being. In the Mediterranean, I had some ships out to sea in the Western Mediterranean as well as the Eastern Mediterranean, leaving the transfer pool and the Red Sea free of ships. So I really don't have to worry about Japanese raids until 41, so not much of a concern to have units there. the closest Axis opponent that I would have is Italy, and I figure, best to defend in the Med for now until they actually declare war. So I moved them from the transfer pool, and they are now the Mediterranean fleet, the west and the east, respectively, here on the ends. Now, the funny thing is, as I'm playing, I'm realizing, okay, I'm not playing with the Ships in Flames expansion, which adds a lot more units to the game and actually replaces the base game naval counters. And in that expansion, if you're playing with everything, even the light cruisers have counters. And typically, the strategy that ends up happening is like you put a few light cruisers out there in the zero box with the convoys as immediate escorts, while having your other ships in these other sea boxes. And the only challenge with that is whatever's in the zero box is just disadvantaged. So ideally, you have stuff across multiple sea boxes. You got guys patrolling the general sea area and then an escort with the convoy in the zero box. But without Ships in Flames, you don't really have like this unlimited pool of ships to use. And so I've opted to not have immediate escorts and instead have ships patrolling for now, and that might come back to bite me in the butt. But we'll see. I'm willing to wait and see. We've got some time yet to decide how we want to proceed with the game. But over further, these sea zones in the Bay of Biscay and Cape St. Vincent have similarly some ships in the sea zones patrolling. They operated out of the Plymouth port. Okay, my camera screwed up again. Now it's happening more often than it used to. I don't know why that is. Anyway, yes, I also have ships in the Pharaoh's Gap, in the higher sea zones, and I have some ships out here. Now, what I've decided to do is, I split off some of the Scapa Flow fleet to cover the Pharaoh's Gap. I did put a surface combat vessel in the forebox of the Norwegian Sea, threatening to mine the Norwegian coast and to ensure that I get the bonus to the die roll, to lower the die roll, which is what you want as the Commonwealth. I've made sure to put a aircraft carrier with other ships escorting it that can make it to the forebox in the North Sea. So at this point, we're sort of laying it all out right as the Commonwealth. We're defending our convoys. We're at least putting naval presence in the convoy lanes that we care about. Not immediate escorts, but we'll see how the Axis responds. And again, up here, we're threatening the mining of the Norwegian Sea, which we could do on the next Allied impulse. So the threat is there, and the Axis will have to decide, do they do anything about it? Can they do anything about it? And is the Commonwealth fleet now spread out enough that they can try to defeat it in detail? And that's going to be something we'll have to figure out. The French transported their Moroccan unit from Algiers to Marseille, and so when you take a transport ship and move it from a port to another port, the transport ship flips, but the cargo does not, and so that unit there, right here, when we get to the land movement step, is actually going to be able to move, or even rail move if we want to. And that's really nice, having taken a combined impulse, because had we just taken a naval, we wouldn't get a land move, but because we did combined, we're kind of doing, combined stuff, right? We're shipping that unit, and then that ship, or that unit, is going to be marching or railing up north to prepare for the defense of the country. So, good stuff there. Straightforward. I didn't do anything else yet because we're not going to do the rest of these steps until now. I just wanted to cover the naval stuff since that took a little bit of counter moving to get everything. Oh, and how could I forget? Jeez. We have the BEF. The transports are face down. I sort of set them above the hex just for ease, but I did move Gort and the mechanized unit into Calais, and so the British have presence in France now. And when we have the next opportunity to move those transports, what we're probably going to be doing is working to get those guys, those transports back home. And one is going to bring over another ground unit. The other
is going to look to move units to Gibraltar and Malta. Or, I guess, this is the other thing I could do. I do have an air transport, and I might be able to simply drop off an infantry unit in France that way and commit the naval transports to moving units to Gibraltar and Malta. So I might do that instead and just make sure I get those guys covered, and then that way the UK, the Commonwealth, has a nice, evenly spread set of forces. They're kind of set up to rock and roll from that perspective. Okay, so naval movement is done. Your naval combat. Well, there's no naval combat possible. Strategic bombardment. So here is an opportunity where we could take a British strategic bomber and try to bomb Germany. Now, unfortunately, I think all of the German factory areas that are in range of our bomber that can do that sort of bombing that we would try. Well, let's see. So that'd be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. No, I guess we could try. No, because then I've got some of these other units that are over here in range. It's possible we could try to do some strategic bombardment right now, but I think the problem is going to come in being the fighter coverage in Germany would make it hard. I could probably pick something to hit, but I think I'm going to pause on that for now. But we will eventually do strategic bombardment. I just don't want to. I don't want to chance it quite yet. We'll wait for that. Well, I don't know. It's sort of hard to figure out, right? So if my bomber here has a range of 14. Do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. No, I kind of got I got things mostly covered. Let's see, 1, 2, 3. Well, I guess I could hit Dresden. Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 11, 12 to Dresden. That would be out of range of, let's see, 1, 2, 3. Yeah, that would actually be out of range. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, Dresden actually is doable. So we could, and we would do it without an escort, and there would be no fighter escort, but we could do it. We could try it. Do we do it on our first impulse? I'm not sure if there's anything keeping us from trying. We would need to roll a 1, or we would need to roll a 10. I guess we could roll a 9 or a 10, and then that unit is used up. Yeah. Okay. Let's try it. Sure. Let's try it. So we fly to Dresden. Again, there's nobody in range to defend Dresden, so that's a mistake as the Germans on my part. I left a hole in air cover, and they're going to get bombed. And what you do is you roll. Where is it? There it is. You roll on the strategic bombardment chart, and we have one factor. So if you look here, we need a 10 or an 11. We do get a +1 of the die roll for mission that did not fight any air-to-air. So this unit is flying unescorted. Again, there is no. Well, okay. Here's the thing. The air mechanics in this game are kind of funky, and technically the Commonwealth player should have asked the German player, should have asked me, do we want to have any cap? And Dresden would have been in range of our fighter flying cap. But I imagine I would have been like, no, I'm not flying any cap. And then he flies, and then the rest of my fighters are out of range of intercept, which is only half range. So this might have been an instance where a German player might have flown cap, but Whatever. We'll roll the dice. We'll see what happens here, guys. Sorry for the weird tangent, but it's kind of an interesting thing to try. So here we go. We're going to roll a die. We need a 9 or a 10, and we roll a 3. So we missed. The plane goes back home and is flipped, and that's it. Okay. Sometimes all this talk, and then we whiff. We miss. We whiff and whiff. Ground striking. So, are there any other ground striking that we want to do? Well, if I take a look at the charts here, how many air missions does the Commonwealth get on a naval? 3. Well, we did 1. Technically, we did 2. I moved my air transport ahead. I cheated a little bit, but that's for a rebase. So I guess we'd have 1 more. We could look at trying to bomb with this Polish land bomber, but I'm not going to do that. There's a Polish land bomber over here, but I don't see a reason to try. What we want to do is use it in defense at this point. It's not unlikely to ground strike anything coherently, so we won't worry about that. Let's see, ground striking, rail movement. So the French do get a rail movement on a combined, and what they're going to do is over here, they're going to rail the Moroccan unit, and let's see, it's either got to go to an HQ, which is considered a station, or a port or a city. I think it makes sense. We'll just throw them onto this HQ, and when you rail move a unit, basically for purposes here, you move along rail lines. They have to stop at a city or port or HQ on a rail line, and they can be transported there, but then they flip. So we're not worried about moving the unit like a couple of hexes and then a couple of hexes or whatever, which wouldn't flip it, but it would take time because it's not going to be relevant until probably way after this turn. We're just going to rail him up, and boom, he's done. He's where he needs to be. We got him from North Africa to France pretty quickly, and they'll be good to go. Okay, then we would look at land movement. So I think, given the present situation, I don't think the French would move anything. They've already moved everything they want. I think the Commonwealth is fine for the moment. The Commonwealth couldn't anyway because they did naval action. The Polish can't do anything. Now, the Russians can do something. They can now go and invade eastern Poland. Is there any reason not to? Well, the answer to that question comes in to the U.S. entry. So if we look at USSR controls East Poland, which will happen as soon as we enter and finish our move there. It's a -7, so there's a 70% chance that another chit will be drawn out of the U.S. Poland. There's only 2 there, which is really rough. And this is one of those things that if the Russians decided to enter eastern Poland and then to enter the Baltic states, they would zero out the U.S. entry chits, basically. And then if the Commonwealth decides to mine the Norwegian coast, there's going to be an issue because now there's no more U.S. entry chits. And so I might have to double check the thinking on that. So it's almost like, what is the Soviet player going to do? If the Soviet player does too much and enters into eastern Poland and the Baltics right away, that might actually be a problem for U.S. entry and could hurt the Allies more. If you're playing this as a 3-player game or like the U.S. is by itself, you could try to come up with some reasoning to say the U.S. is doing this to screw over the USSR is doing this to screw over the U.S., but I'm not too worried about that quite yet. We won't worry about the Baltics, Baltic states this turn. What we will do is we will move into, we'll just move to Vilna here for the sake of it. The Soviets have entered eastern Poland and have conquered now eastern Poland. So as they do that, they automatically conquer it again. This is the special minor rules that are present in sort of back-end section of the rulebook. Yeah, Poland has not been conquered yet, so this is their opportunity for the partitioning of Poland. And yeah, there you go. So that has happened, and now the United States is going to decide how much they care about that. We're going to roll a die. And yeah, it's a 2, so we're going to randomly lose another U.S. marker. And shaking my hand up to figure out what we pull, we pulled the 1. So in terms of U.S. entry so far, we're a bit lucky in that we've only pulled the 1 chits, which I guess is better than drawing the 3 chit. But the U.S. player is probably saying, hey, Commonwealth, you know, I know you're thinking about mining that Norwegian coast. I don't know if that's such a good idea. So we'll have to see about that. So there you go. So the eastern Poland has been conquered. The Baltic states are not yet conquered, but that could be not too far into the future. Land movement is done. Are there any air transports? Not right now. Debark land units at sea. That's different than moving a transport from port to port. So you could put units on a transport in a sea zone and then have them debark from the sea zone, and that's what that step is for. We didn't do that. There aren't any invasions, and there are no paradrops, and no land combats that we're going to declare here. We're not going to bother to try to fight over here. The French just don't have the force composition necessary to do it. And so the air bases technically already did that for the Commonwealth. And any reorganization. The Gort HQ could potentially reorg the transports, and in fact, I think I'm going to go ahead and do that. So we're going to have Gort flip, and he's going to provide 2 reorg points, and because it's 2 reorg points in a naval action, we can flip 2 naval units. We're going to flip the transports back. So on the next Allied impulse, those transports can return home. That just gives them, you know, we're getting a little bit shortening of the time required to get those other units transported to where we want them to be. So far, you know, so good. We'll have those guys return home on the next Allied impulse. So I think that's it for the Allied impulse. So what we're going to do, I'm going to go ahead and slide the impulse marker 1 box and flip it to the axis side. And now we're going to roll for weather. So we haven't done this yet. But now is the time. I need to find my weather chart. Okay, so we are September, October, and there's no modifiers to the die roll, so we're just going to roll the die. Ooh, a 10. Oh, that's not good. That is not good at all. That is not good at all for the Axis. Terrible. Terrible. Okay. So what's a 10 on September, October? Storms, storms, rain, storm, rain, and fine. That's rough, man. That is rough. That's rough stuff. So storm in the Arctic, storm in the North Temperate, rain in the Med, storm in the North Monsoon, rain in the South Monsoon, and fine in the South Temperate. Now we're going to have the box slide, or the marker slide 2 boxes per impulse, and there's a +2 to the die roll. So this is bad. This is the potential for early winter. Something to note is that because of this die roll, having the modifier, we're now more likely to roll high on the chart, which means now that the bad weather is here, it's more likely to stick around for the duration of September, October. So this is very, very bad. This is very, very bad for the Axis. Very unfortunate that this has occurred for them. Really bad, because storm is a really rough weather function to have right now, especially knowing that they've still got to get into that city. Storm is going to cause all kinds of problems. So with it being storm, we'll just show this on the weather. Supply range is 2 European hexes. and we'll look at how badly that impacts us. No invasions are allowed, so we're right now we're not even thinking about invading Norway yet. The land unit terrain cost is doubled. Land attacks are -2 odd level shifts. You can't fly any air missions except rebases. Naval air combat is not allowed, nor no shore bombardment, and it's harder for planes and sea zones to find ships. So right now, basically all that air power that we had, is now useless. And just when we thought we were going to have, goodness there, we're screwed over. And it's funny, the British got that bombing mission that failed, but they got it done right before the weather turned really bad. So thunderstorms in the North Temperate, that is going to be a problem. Oh man, that's a bummer. That's a bummer die roll if I ever saw one. That is going to be, that's rough. Well, I think the Axis, to keep time, are going to have to throw everything they have into an attack on Warsaw just to try to clear it, which is going to be crazy. So, okay, well, I think we're going to have to figure things out from here. One thing before I put a cut, I'm not going to end the video here, I'm going to put a cut. If there's a question of maybe why didn't the Allies declare war on Italy if Italy is weak, in case anyone's wondering that. It is a pretty bad hit to U.S. entry, and effectively all it's going to do is allow the Italians to kind of jump into action, and now, I don't know, I guess they get a surprise on the Italians, but really the Western Allies aren't set up. It's really hard to set up to try to do an early Italian declaration and try to beat the Italians to the punch. So that's why that didn't happen. There is a question as to when the Italians will declare war on the Allies. I'm not going to do it this impulse, but it is something I need to be thinking about when I want to do that. I might wait until next turn, or until the spring or later of 40, just when things have gotten a little bit better for the situation and U.S. entry and all that good stuff. So I'm going to put a cut here. I'm going to ponder these weather impacts. Just the worst, and we'll come back. Okay, so I don't think we're going to do any additional declarations of war, but the Germans do call out their reserves, and most of those have ended up over here in the cities to the west, just so that we have units there ready to rock and roll for our planned invasion of France and the Low Countries. No big deal, and then we might leave some guys behind here to hold the border with Russia once we're done with Poland. But again, this weather is just killer. Oh, it's so killer. It's so rough. So what actions are we taking? Well, the Italians are going to take a combined because they have to. The Italians did not declare war on the French or the Commonwealth because we're good as is right now. They don't want to spark anything. They don't want to put another chit back into the U.S. Entry Cup. They're cool to wait it out. So Italians are stagnant. Germans called out their reserves. So again, Italians doing a combined. Germany needs to think about what they want to do. So air is limited now. That much is for certain. So what could Germany do with a combined if they decided to do it? Well, they'd get 6 land moves and 3 land attacks. That's actually quite a bit, and probably more than the Germans even want, because there's only 3 Polish hexes to attack anyway, so that would be 3 attacks. That's actually pretty good. For them, it would allow a number of moves, so they could kind of get situated a little bit for the assault on Warsaw anyway. And if we did a combined, that would give us 1 naval move, which we could use to send out submarines. And if we did that, we could try to snipe the capital ship that is in the Norwegian Sea, or we could try to go for straight up convoy raiding. It really just depends. I'm not sure what is the best thing to do here. And if I look, let's see, they could potentially abort that ship. Hmm. Where are my subs? Where are my subs? Do I just have the one sub? I must have just the one sub. Now, they don't have... The sub's not the good subs. All the good subs are elsewhere. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I don't think my subs are strong enough to really contest yet. I need to get some of these other subs finished building before we really go on a protracted excursion out there. We could try to fight a naval battle in the North Sea. That's one option. We do probably... Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, see, this is tough, guys. This is tough. This is the kind of stuff you need to be thinking about, right? If I took the entirety of the German fleet and went out with them, we'd be taking an awful risk, but we could try to clear the North Sea, and that could be valuable. The only problem is we'd be disadvantaged by being in a lower sea box. But the Commonwealth has spread itself out, so... Yeah, this could be very bad if I screw it up. I think what we do is we just take a land action, and we do what we can. In our typical spot, we could try to send out, a naval air mission and try to disrupt the Commonwealth that way with air, but then it would be, our air versus an aircraft carrier. Yeah, I don't know. And we can't even do a naval air mission anyway because it's storming. All right, forget it. We're not going to do. We're just going to do a land action. The combined here is awfully tempting, just in terms of what's feasible out there. We could try to do some sub rating, but we pulled the crappy sub, and I kind of want to wait for the better subs to come up. So we'll wait until we have a greater force of subs to do Wolfpack activity. Okay, so we'll do land stuff for sure, and does the Italian force want to do anything? No, I don't think the Italians have anything that they want to do. We'll simply skip over them. They're waiting in the wings. So no naval stuff. Any strategic bombardment? No. Ground strikes? No. Rail movement? I don't think the Germans need to do any rail movement. So we'll do land movement. So the real trick here is that all the terrain costs are double. So a clear hex is 2. So moving 2 hexes, 1, 2 from here is going to cost 4 movement points. So everything here is very restricted. Just getting everybody to where I want them to be is going to be a slight challenge here. You can imagine if you're on the East Front against Russia, there's a tremendous amount of worry when it's bad weather and you can't move everything you want, or your HQ limits are restricted. With the supply being 2, we have to be 2 hexes. Every unit has to be 2 hexes from a HQ or a home country city, and that HQ's got to be able to trace a rail path back to home. This isn't a big deal for Poland, but I'll have to be careful as I move guys around to get things just so. I guess the only side benefit here is that Poland can't use their Air Force either. So on a dark and stormy night, will we see the taking of Warsaw? Well, we'll see. I'm going to do movement, and then I'll come back and show you the movement, and we'll see what we want to do about the actual land combat. So this impulse is going to be really simple, right? There's not much we can do, not a lot of air, and we've basically just given ourselves over to a land action to do everything we need to do to force the issue in Warsaw. So we'll be right back. Okay, well, we got movement, and I set the Polish air to the side there. They're not actually in that hex to the east, just to kind of figure out what the combat odds are. And I'm looking at it, and I'm going to be honest, I can't figure out a way to make the attack work. If we had air power, we'd be all right. But the -2 odd shifts, we basically would have had a 4-to-1 odds attack on Warsaw. But -2 makes that 2-to-1, and even with a +1 of the die roll, those results are not pretty. So German High Command is saying, you know, surely these storms will subside here very shortly. We don't need to worry. We'll halt. We'll allow our guys to sort of advance and set up a perimeter, and we'll just hang out. We'll just hang out, which is a bummer. I'm sort of saddened because I thought we'd be able to knock Poland out, but I just can't get the odds that I want on Warsaw itself. It's going to take time, and none of the other attacks are much better for that matter. Stupid camera screwing up again. I think we're good. I don't think there's anything I want to do now. I got my guys moved up. The air is all in range of what I want. So what we're going to do is we're simply going to end the move, and the box is going to move 2 and flip to the Allied impulse. So move 2 boxes. Okay, so now it's the Allies. Now, will the Allies declare war on anybody? No. Do they decide to mine the coast? Now is the time that they would do it. And I wonder now if there's any reason to hold off with the weather. I'm not sure if we still get the bonus for the weather piece of it. -1 die roll of face up undamaged CVs in the force section on the North Sea area. And no face up German SCS or CVs in any section of the North Sea or Norwegian Sea. Yeah. So what's the U.S. entry cost if we decided to do it? That's really the question, as the Allies. Yeah, the camera's screwing up again. It's happening all the time, and I don't know why. But yeah, we're going to lose a U.S. entry kit on a 4 or less for mining the Norwegian coast. So, let's see, would the Commonwealth take a naval? Let's see, the French will take, I guess the French will take a combined. Again, there's not much that they want to do right now, or even need to at the moment. The one thing they could do is put their fleet out to sea, so they could take a naval. I'm not sure how good it would do, but there you go. Yeah, we'll do a naval as France, and we'll move just to keep the Italians honest. They're gonna move the subs into the 2 box of the Italian coast, and the rest of the fleet we will have out in the Western Med just because we can. Just because we can, we'll put them out here.